I'm Gary's big brother. I'm 4 years older than him, but we were always very close. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that Gary was always a great athlete, and so he was always playing up with the older boys. And so he was, even though we didn't play on the same teams, we always were very competitive and out in the backyard. We all had our pickup basketball games and baseball games in the street, and he was always there with us as well because he was such a great athlete. Well, we both had a lot of God-given talent, and unfortunately, in my case, I had some bad timing. At the time when I was drafted by the Angels out of high school, in 1968, the war in Vietnam was going on, and if any of you remember who were of that age at that time, everybody was given a lottery number, and of course my bad luck was that I got a low lottery number, and so consequently that had a lot to do with the decision that I made to go to school and get my degree and still play ball at USC, and then in pro ball for a couple of years with San Francisco. Well, I had been playing for 2 years in the minors, and I was 24 years old, and I was still in single A. And as you well know, your career in professional athletics is very short. And I just didn't think that I would have the opportunity to play for any length of time since I was still in A ball and I was 24 years old, so I decided to move on. I think you always have regrets about some decisions you make in your life. I think probably the biggest regret I have is in regard to the fact that I didn't actually sign out of high school with the Angels. Because as it turned out, even though I had a low lottery number, they still didn't go that high, and I wouldn't have had to have gone to Vietnam, and I could have probably had a better opportunity and chance to play professional ball at the higher level had I signed it at 18 rather than out of college. Well, when I was 16 and Gary was 12, of course, our mother passed away, and it was a tremendously traumatic experience for both of us. However, my dad and Gary and I pulled together and did what we had to do to try to replace the things that our mother always did for us. And so for me, it was a tremendously learning experience for me in that I had to learn how to do all the cleaning and the washing and the cooking. And so the cooking part of it is actually carried over into what I'm doing now. So in that respect, it was kind of I guess a godsend, if you will, for me to be forced to learn how to cook, basically. And of course, it was tough on Gary and tough on my dad too. But we pulled together, and I think the fact that we were all involved actively in athletics was the thing that helped us get us through that time. I don't think I have quite the tidiness that Gary has, but I'm kind of a pile guy. I know where everything's at, and so in my respect, and to me, I'm organized. But for Gary to be like me, it wouldn't happen, because he's got to have everything in its place and away and tidy, and so when he sees my desk, he can't hardly believe it. I think I'm a little more quiet than Gary is. Gary's, I think, probably because of his life and his life. He was, he was on the scene when he won the punt, pass, and kick contest as a 7- and 9-year-old. So Gary's always been kind of in front of the camera and kind of has the gift of gab. I always kid him about it, and I think I've been kind of the one that's been just the solid, quiet one. Played football in high school for actually all 4 years. I did get hurt as a junior, and I was a quarterback as a junior, and then they moved me to wide receiver, and I was an all-county wide receiver, in fact, all-county player of the year in football in 1968. I don't know, catching for me was always, I always flinched when the ball came, and I don't know if somebody told me that the tools of ignorance are not for you, and so I never got involved in it. Well, in fact, Gary didn't even get to be a catcher until he turned pro. He never played catcher in Little League or Pony League, American Legion, high school, and they converted him to a catcher, and of course, the rest is history. Without a doubt, either pitching or catching is the easiest path to the major leagues, and the major league team obviously saw that Gary was a good hitter, good solid hitter, and he went on to become one of the greatest defensive catchers in the history of the game. So he worked hard at it, and but they knew that they had a bat in the lineup, and they had to find a spot for him, because he didn't do too well in the outfield. He was running into the fences and busting his head open, and so they had to find a place for him. And he's withstood a lot of injuries and all, but still did a tremendous job behind the plate. I think probably my favorite moment was in the World Series, and in 1986, and having the opportunity, my family and I, my wife and I, to have the opportunity to go to the games. Drove Gary's car from New York up to Boston, so he had a car up in Boston. And we had a wonderful time. The drive was beautiful. The leaves, of course, are changing at that time of the year. And, of course, we don't get that out here in California. So, to see the Kennedy compound, and, of course, Boston is a storied city as well. But that series was just phenomenal. In fact, the divisional series were tremendous as well, both in the American League and in the National League. And then, of course, the World Series and all the things that happened in the World Series, the ups and downs, and how they fought back to win the games, and it was just a real thrill to be there. We were at Game 6, and a lot of us didn't think they were going to pull it out, but boy, they sure had a lot of faith. And there was a crazy group of guys on that team, but somehow, some way, they always seem to come out on top. It's real tough to see him get criticized in the media like that, because I really truly believe a lot of people don't understand how Gary is. They see him as being perhaps arrogant and of himself, and he's just totally not like that at all. He's completely different than that, and you'd have to be around him for as long as I've been around him to know that. And it's just a shame that people criticize people and when people are misunderstood.